What's up, everyone? Aaron Nagler here, PackersNews.com, live on Facebook late Tuesday afternoon. I spent most of the day thinking it was Wednesday, but I'm on board now. It's Tuesday. Time to talk some Packers. Not a whole lot news-wise, but as is my want, I wanted to jump on Facebook and talk to you fine folks, Packer fans around the world. Always checking in when we go live. Want to see what's on your mind on this sweltering July afternoon. My buddy Dan Leisher joins us. Dan, how was Milwaukee? Glad to see you out here in the old Facebook. Bruce Wayne is here. Very good. In case any bad guys show up. What do you think of McCoy? I believe you're talking about the allegations against LaShawn McCoy. It doesn't sound good. Obviously, if you haven't been paying attention on social media this afternoon, the Buffalo Bills running back has been accused of domestic violence, among a bunch of other things. The legal process sure seems to be churning away on it now, as of a couple hours ago, so I'm going to let that take its course before I comment further. Ready for the season to start? Yes, Matt. I was ready probably a couple weeks ago. Arizona checking in. What's up, Joe? Chris, what's up? What's up, Aaron? What kind of news we got on our Packers today? Paul, nothing new. Nothing breaking from 1265 Lombardi today. Obviously, the news announcement yesterday was the weekend celebration, opening weekend. They'll have Steve Miller, the Steve Miller Band, playing Saturday night prior to the game on Sunday. But other than that, all the news that fit to print is pretty minimal. Ken, hello. Thanks for joining us. Aaron's starting us off with a fire petting. I like it. Get on it early, man. I like it. Be thinking ahead. Matt, grilling some brats. What are your go-to toppings? I don't put much on my brats. I'll maybe put some mustard on there, maybe some relish, depending on my mood. But more often than not, I'm leaving it alone. That old PSA when we were kids, don't drown your food. I follow that advice. Northwest Wisconsin, what's up, Ben? Deborah, hi. Thanks for joining us. Matthew, on Cobb, good question. Is he healed up? I doubt he'll be all healed up by the time camp starts. Word is that he will be taking it slowly at the start of camp. Now, what that means, we don't really know. We won't really know until camp opens in a couple weeks and we get to talk to Randall. And I suspect there's a good chance that he gets put on the PUP, the physically unable to perform list. Of course, that's different than being placed on the regular season version. In camp, when you're put on the PUP, it just means you're held out of activities until you can practice. And then once you practice, you come off the PUP and you can't go back on it. Trevor, no news is good news. Talk to the Bills about that. Any chance we get anyone in the supplemental draft? I mean, you can't totally dismiss it, but I'd be very surprised if they put in a bid for anybody. I think they like their 90-man roster as it is. Maybe there's someone, I know they attended a few of the pro days of the prospects who are up. Maybe they put in a low-level bid. I think if there's anybody who actually does end up getting drafted, though, I think it'll take a bit of a significant investment draft pick-wise, and I can't see Brian Gutekunst pulling that trigger, although with 2 first-round picks, maybe that gives him a little bit more leeway to use a 4th or a 3rd. But I'd still be very surprised. What are your thoughts on Aaron Rodgers and how he never throws on time? Woo, that would be a very long video if I went into all that. I will say, I think he can sometimes be a victim of his own greatness in the sense that he will see things underneath and turn them down and then escape the pocket and try and look for something bigger downfield. That's been his MO for quite some time. But I do think he would help himself and help the offense get into a rhythm if he were less reliant on that style of play and tried to stay a little bit more on schedule. Now, I'm saying that here sitting in my room in New York City in early July. It's quite another thing to be there under center, pulling the trigger and making it happen, which Aaron Rodgers has done for over a decade at an insanely high level, winning 2 MVPs in the process. Guiding his team to Super Bowl championship, etc., etc. The point being, he is one of the best at what he does. So far be it from me to sit here and say he should be doing it this way. But I do think the offense would get into rhythm a little bit better if he were to take what's on offer earlier in games. You saw that early on last year, especially, whether it was the Seattle game, the Atlanta game, the Cincinnati game. There were a few times when there are just easy looks underneath, maybe not huge gains, maybe 3, 4, 5 yards, but just to get the offense in a rhythm, I do think it would behoove him to do that. But like I said, he doesn't need advice from me. Do you see all the rookie wide receivers making the 53? Alex, I'm torn because I think they're all talented and I think they all could, but I have a hard time believing that all 3 of them are going to make significant contributions on special teams, especially guys that were all drafted on the 3rd day. History will tell you that rarely happens. So while I think there's a possibility that we see that, I think the odds are a bit long. I think 1, maybe 2 of the guys jump to the head of the class, so to speak, particularly by making plays every day in camp and preseason, but then also by showing that they have what it takes on special teams. Those are the key kind of ingredients that they're going to need to get on the 53-man roster. I think Ripkowski has an uphill battle to make the roster. Do you agree? I don't know about an uphill battle, but I think he'll have a battle on his hands, and I don't think a lot's been kind of written or talked about in that regard. I've mentioned it a few times here. I do think it's going to be a battle between him and Joe Carriage at the fullback spot. But I don't know if it's an uphill battle. I think it's a fairly even battle. I don't think Ripkowski's lost it or anything. But I do think Joe Carriage was looking like a pretty decent kind of challenger prior to his injury last year. Joan, hello. Thanks for joining us. Is there a deep-rooted reason that the Packers aren't looking at DeMarco Murray at running back? Mostly they like their young guys. They're cheap, and they don't want to pay an aged running back to come in and learn their system and take carries away from their young guys. If there's a team that's shown that they can go young at running back and make it work, it's Green Bay. You got Aaron Rodgers there. The number one thing you got to do back there is pass protect, much more so than run the football. And that's why Jamal Williams will probably have the lead spot, at least for the time being. I just think, they want to allocate resources other places, and paying an aging free agent running back. It just wasn't Ted Thompson's MO, and it sure doesn't look like it's going to be Brian Gutekunst's MO either. You tweeted about the Chicago article spelling the demise of the Packers. It was funny because I kind of needled them again today, and they didn't take it too well, so I'll stop. No, I thought it was funny. It was Bears blog saying, this is why the Packers are now going to stop winning for a long time. They haven't even paid attention to anything in the last 9 months, I guess. But I just thought it was kind of funny. I just threw it out there as a joke. Thought it was fun watching everybody's reactions. But then today, NFL.com put up a, 5 reasons why the Packers will make the playoffs this year. And I kind of needled them and said, oh, the Bears blog isn't going to like this. And then whoever the guy is shot back at me with some just unfortunate remarks. So that's the end of that. The guy can't take a joke. I'm done. Will Cousins be a casualty? I don't know exactly what that means. He'll be the starter, so I'm not sure. PBR on tap is painfully underrated. Now there's a take I can get behind. What do you expect from the Bears? I expect improvement. I think offensively they're going to be a lot better. Obviously I think a lot rides on Mitch Trubisky and his development. I do think he's talented, and I do think Matt Nagy is a very good offensive mind. I don't know if they can just suddenly turn it around the way the Rams did last year. I do think they'll be much better, though. Not that that's going to be difficult. And, on the defensive side of the ball, I think they have some pieces. Obviously, they have the coordinator. I think they'll be better. I just don't know by how much. Mike, is Dez a possibility? I think there's a small chance. I think an injury in camp would make it a bigger possibility. But I think the chance of them making that move right now is pretty minimal. How long is Cobb out with his injury? We don't know yet. All signs and all reports, everybody we've talked to say the Packers have no worries about him being ready for week 1. So clearly it's not a significant injury, but it will be enough to keep him out early on in camp. Are the Lions the forgotten team of the North? I guess you could say that, Ryan. I think, the coaching change, you're not really sure what to expect there. They kept the offensive coordinator in Jim Bob Cooter. if for no other reason, then they get to keep saying his awesome name. Matt Stafford, I think, is a perennially underrated player. I think a lot depends on what kind of turnaround they can have on defense. I think Matt Patricia is a very good coach, but we've seen time and time again people leave the nest there in New England and they fail wherever they go as head coaches. So I don't doubt his acumen, and I think he will put his imprint on the team early, but how much better they get, I don't think Jim Caldwell was a bad coach. That was the first guy to get them to the first head coach to get them to the playoffs in decades, and his biggest failing was he couldn't win a playoff game. So, I withhold judgment. I don't think they're forgotten. I just think it's kind of a unknown factor when it comes to Patricia, his background, taking over this team. This is a team that has been pretty prolific on offense, and they need to turn it around on defense. And Patricia could be the guy to do it. Does Pankey have a chance at the right tackle job? I would be very surprised. I think he can play left guard. I think that's his best spot. I think last summer that was his best spot. I think he's a bit of a liability at tackle, and I think maybe I'm being kind. I'd be surprised if he challenged for a spot there. I think that will come down to Jason Spriggs, Kyle Murphy, and Byron Bell. That trio will most likely battle it out to take over the starting right tackle spot until Bulaga's back. Will we see Kenny Clark at his finest? Jose, I think so. I've said throughout the summer, I think he's a star in the making. Star in the wings. Waiting in the wings, ready to explode. I think you saw a step last year. I don't think he has come close to reaching his full potential yet. I think he is going to maybe burst on the national scene this year. I'd love to see Matthews play more inside linebacker. Thoughts? It's funny because that's one of those things where I think we've talked about it and written about it so much at this point. I know Mike McCarthy's sick of talking about it, sick of us asking about it. I'm with you. I think it makes a world of sense. I think it makes their defense better. I think it helps him. I think it helps elongate his career. But for whatever reason, Matthews seems adamant about staying outside, and the Packers seem more than happy to acquiesce to his wishes. Maybe that changes under Pettin. Maybe they become a little bit more multiple with him. I mean, it's not like Capers didn't move him around a bunch. So he most certainly did. I think a full-time switch into the middle is more than called for. But they don't pay me to make those decisions. If House makes the cut, we're in trouble. Oh, Joe. Well, I will only say this. At the start of the offseason, when the season was over, I declared quite adamantly that if they wanted to be a championship defense, they had to move on from Devon House. Now, they did bring him back, but as I said when they re-signed him, I'll be surprised if he's on the opening day roster. If guys develop the way they are hoping, especially between the draft and your second-year guy and Kevin King, a guy like an undrafted guy last year like Lindsey Pipkins, if that development and talent and promise and forward movement comes from that position the way I think it will, the way it should, I think there's a good chance Devon House doesn't make the initial 53. Any suspensions or arrests for the Packers? Mike, other than Aaron Jones, none that I'm aware of. Do you see any other former Packers rejoining the team in the future? I guess you mean as players. Nothing's imminent, but doesn't mean you can rule it out. What happened to the undrafted free agent cornerback? Sorry, they go fast. I missed the name. Sorry. Do you like having 2 divisional games in the first 2 weeks? Yeah, sure. I think it's interesting because you usually get offenses a little bit more behind the 8 ball, so to speak, early on in the year. Defenses, by their nature, that side of the ball is much more read and react. So, the adage goes is that the defenses are always a little bit ahead of the offenses coming out of camp. But by playing a divisional opponent, usually you have the book on them. So you've spent all summer getting ready for them, plus you know them. You've played them twice a year for how many years, et cetera, et cetera. Now, with the Vikings, they know that staff backwards and forwards on the defensive side of the ball and the scheme and everything Zimmer wants to do. Clearly they have a new offensive coordinator and they have a new quarterback. So that becomes a bit of a chess match. as well. Obviously, on the Packers side, they have a new defensive coordinator in Mike Pettin. So that's where a little bit of the kind of mystery comes in and the not knowing quite what to expect. But as far as, facing teams in your division early in the year, I think that's almost kind of what you want, provided there hasn't been massive turnover. Clearly in Chicago, they know what to expect on the defensive side of the ball. I think Matt Nagy will be, a formidable opponent for Pettin. However, I do think there's enough out there, especially from kind of what he did with Andy Reid in Kansas City, especially early last year, to give you an idea of what he's going to try and do, especially when it comes to Tariq Cohen, who I think is going to be a big-time weapon for Chicago this season. Michael Clark making chance of making the roster for Michael Clark. Mike, a lot depends on his refining of his skills at the position. I think he's got all the athletic talent in the world. A lot of it's going to depend on his ability to read coverages off the line of scrimmage, to read them the same way Aaron Rodgers does, because that's a big key. Last year, almost every single play he made in camp was on some kind of either fly or post route. That's stuff we were running in the backyard when we were in grade school. If he can become the complete package, then I think he's got a chance. But there's no way to know how he's doing in that regard until we see him on Radnitsky Field with some pads on and going up against some actual coverages. Packers having a new offensive coordinator and defensive coordinator should help them too. I definitely agree on the defensive side. On offense, I know Joe Philbin is back and things could be different. They probably will be a bit different. I don't think it's going to be markedly different, though. I don't think it's going to be like all of a sudden this completely different offense. I think it's still Mike McCarthy and Aaron Rodgers, which you pretty much can kind of, you pretty much know what to expect a lot of the time. Now, like I said, doesn't mean that there won't be changes and differences, but for the most part, I think a lot of it will be what you're used to. Can you be my unpaid intern? Sure, Bryce. Give me a cup of coffee. Thanks. All right, everybody. I'm going to take off. Thank you so much for joining me. I'm sorry if I couldn't get to your question, but I'll be back tomorrow. So if you think of anything between now and then, make sure you're here to comment away, and I'll answer whatever I can. In the meantime, make sure you're checking PackersNews.com for all the latest. We've got our continuing look at all the opponents the Packers face in 2018. And pretty soon, coming up in a couple days, we'll start our positional previews, starting with the quarterbacks. So make sure you're around for that. Make sure you're checking PackersNews.com. I'll talk to you all tomorrow. Thanks a lot, everyone.